most of us are here. Okay, so this is right, the Shabbat right before Rosh Hashanah. We all know this. We are all in planning mode for our meals and things like that. And so we're going to be in planning mode for our service. And so last week, we talked about the shofar blowing and the shofarot part of the Musaf Amidah. We talked about it just, not in super in-depth, but somewhat. But today I thought we should talk about how the Musaf Amidah is different on Rosh Hashanah than it is on Shabbat, which you're most familiar with. And we learned about the difference, but in our textbook, we went through the Amidah, and he breaks down for us the difference between the Shacharit Kedusha and the Musaf Kedusha, which is the added section. So today I thought we'll build on that, and we'll talk about the 3 added sections that we have for Rosh Hashanah in the Musaf service. So if you have Lev Shalem, open to page 185, which is the Shabbat Amidah service. Does anyone need a page for the other book, or everybody's good? You can find it in whatever book you have. Yes.
I think I can find it.
Okay. That looked like Sim Shalom, but
it is.
Yeah, okay.
So did you hear from Edith?
Yeah, she has a doctor's appointment. She said she's going to be late.
Okay, I was just trying to call her. All right.
Don't worry about her. She's fine.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
bringing, for worrying but not worrying. How's that? Okay, so everybody have a page that looks to be the Shabbat Musaf service with the Amidah on that page. So
You said in Lev Shalom is what page?
185. Sim Shalom could be either 430 or 156 or 346. Depends on what version of Sim Shalom you have. There's so many versions, but okay. So, and then I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. Let's see. In my new computer, sharing my screen. Oh, golly. Well, I guess that's what it's going to. I hope this works, ladies.
Did you say a bracha for the new computer? Just kidding.
I allows them to share screen. Oh, for crying out loud. Hold on.
The heck out of you.
There we go. Thank you. Allow the apps below. What's happening? Oh, I'm sorry. See, this is exactly what I was worried about. Give me one more second. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Yes. I think this is going to be all right. Let's see if, hold on, we'll share screen again. I don't think you're going to be able to see it. Well, I don't understand why. I have a feeling this isn't going to work. So yes, do this. Why is it? Oh, I'm sorry, ladies. What is the problem? Come on, come on, come on. I might have to sign in on my other. This is why I did not take down the other computer. Share screen. Oh, for golly. Oh, this is a security and privacy to grant access. Okay, hold on one more time. System preferences, security and privacy. Oh, here's why, security and privacy. Come on. For goodness sakes.
There's Edith.
Yep, she's there.
I'm gonna sign in from my other computer. I'm sorry, this is not.
Not to worry, we're here. Da, da, da,
letting me
da,
share
da.
my screen, and the whole class is based on you guys seeing what I'm trying to show you.
Good. Shana Tov.
Shana Tov.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, Shabbat Shalom.
Happy autumn.
Yes, I have on a jacket.
Well,
It's
you're
chilly.
always prepared. Edith, we know you're always prepared for what the world's going to throw at you.
Well, it's chilly here.
Where do you live? Where do you
Glen Burnie.
Oh, in Annapolis. Okay, you're in Maryland, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was 94 here in Cincinnati on Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
54 when I woke up yesterday morning.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's 50 degrees in New Jersey.
All right, I'm gonna log out here.
Where in New Jersey are you, Lenore?
Florham Park, which is Morris County.
I grew up in West Orange in Essex County, and my husband is from Rockaway. He went to Forest Hills High School. I'm a Jersey girl. That's why I don't have a Cincinnati accent.
How long have you been in Cincinnati?
37 years.
oh, okay.
A long time.
But I'm no schnooky.
You know what?
No schnooky. You know that woman from the Jersey Shore. There used to be a TV show called The Jersey Shore.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Schnooky.
Okay,
Yeah.
Don't worry, you're not missing anything, Geraldine. I didn't watch it. I just heard about her.
okay.
Okay.
Studying Hebrew and Torah is much better for us than watching schnooky.
Okay.
Ah,
Sir lives.
Yeah.
Worth the wait, Rachel. Thank you.
Great.
Oh, I have mine.
What just happened?
I don't have my matzah at home.
No, you don't need a matzah, you need just a regular Shabbat prayer book, but now.
Oh, I have my Lev Shalom at home. And open up, yeah.
Okay, but I have to find the page now. I had it all set up on the other computer, but it's not sharing my screen. Is this the
Don't
right?
worry about it. We waited our whole adult lives for this. We can wait 3 minutes more.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I got the wrong book.
Okay, so while I look for the page, oh, crying out loud. As I was saying, so we know the Musaf service is an extra service that is added to represent or stand in for what used to be a special offering in addition,
Page
right?
125.
Thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
what I'm looking for. It's here somewhere. I'm so close. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna make it bigger so you guys can actually see it. How's that? That's good?
Yep.
Okay, so, and the reason I wanted you to have your Lev Shalem open is for reference for what is, the comparison of Shabbat versus Rosh Hashanah. So on Shabbat, here we would do, if you look in your Lev Shalem, right? We have the beginning, the patriarchs, matriarchs, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, right? Exactly, we have the beginning. And then we would go, and that's the same on Rosh Hashanah, as I'm showing you on my screen. And then we would have in your Lev Shalem, it says at the bottom of page 185, or whichever book you're looking underneath this paragraph, on Shabbat Shuvah, we add. But so what we add for Shabbat Shuvah, which is the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we say this on Rosh Hashanah. So the sentence is Achrenu l'chaim melech chafetz b'chaim v'katvenu b'sefer chaim l'mancha Elohim chayim. And so this dovetails or actually probably what's the word I'm looking for, adds on to and brings emphasis to the whole notion of Zachor or Zachrenu, remember us, which we're constantly saying throughout Rosh Hashanah. So, and then, which makes all the sense in the world, right? And if you look at the screen so here they say Zachrenu, remember us. This brief, anonymous and ancient poem added at each service during the high holiday season stresses the theme that God treasures life. On this day, we pray for another year of life. So Zachrenu and Kadvenu b'Sefer Chaim, write us in the book of life for a good life. Okay. Then we continue on just as we would on Shabbat. Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham. Okay. Ufokdei Sarah. Okay, same as what we would have on Shabbat. And then again, it follows the same as Shabbat. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Etim Atah Rav L'Hoshia. Same as Shabbat. And then continues. Mechalkei Chaim B'Chesed Mechayim Etim B'Rachamim Rabim. Same as Shabbat. Okay. Then we get down to, if you look in your Siddur in front of you, after the paragraph I was just singing, Mechalkei Chaim B'Chesed, then they say on Shabbat Shuvah, we add. Well, on Rosh Hashanah, it's not that we've added it, it's that we sing it. Mi chamocha av rachamim. And then Zocher Yitzurav L'chaim Barachamim. So again, the whole concept of Zachor, Zocher, remembrance, right? I'm just looking to see if in the notes here, there's anything specific. So here, who is like you? So Micha Mocha, that's up here. Micha Mocha Avraham. Okay, so this is slightly different than Shabbat because of the Zocher, Yitzurav, L'chaim Barachamim. And they say here in the sidebar, who is like you, source of compassion? Micha Mocha Av Harachamim. A second piyut inserted at each of the services in the high holiday season, emphasizing God's kindness. Okay. You know, well, we'll get to it in a minute. I won't jump ahead. I have to go in order. So I'm looking, so that's okay. So there's this also added part that isn't in the regular Shabbat, Uvachein Tain. So here, this is Uvachein right here. We're gonna read the sidebar. These three paragraphs, Uvachein Tain, and then there's some paragraphs after it, which are introduced in this with the same word. Each of them starts with Uvachein, are ascribed by many scholars to the 3rd century and may constitute the earliest poetic additions to the Amidah. Stages of redemption are described in this series of prayers. Reuven Hammer, a modern commentator, remarks that the first paragraph implores God to cause the entire world to live with reverence for God. The next paragraph discusses not the universal, but the particular, the return of Israel to its land, and specifically to Jerusalem, and the kingship of David. The third paragraph describes the rejoicing that will come to the righteous when you remove the tyranny of arrogance from the earth, and God will rule alone over the entire world from Zion and Jerusalem. So this is the first paragraph of the thing. And then there's a second uvachain and a third uvachain, okay? And then we still have some additions. I'm just trying to see. Okay, so this is why people wonder why on Rosh Hashanah is the Amidah so much longer. Well, because we have a lot of additions to it. It's not the same Amidah we do on Shabbat. So I'm trying to see. So we're calling the Exodus when he's Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim, which we say Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim frequently enough, but again, it reinforces the theme of to remember, Zecher. So here they say in the sidebar, on each Shabbat and holy day, we recall the Exodus as the formative moment of our history. But we know that anything with Zecher becomes even more powerful as part of the high holiday season. Let's see. Okay. So in here, at the end of page 127, so we have here, the addition is actually Hashabbat Hazeh, because this isn't, Rosh Hashanah doesn't usually fall on Shabbat. It's the exception when it falls on Shabbat. So the bracha here, or the prayer, et Yom Hazikaron Hazeh, Yom Teruah, so that's what the sound of the shofar, Mikra Kodesh Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim. So here's that we remember our exodus from Egypt. Yom Zikaron or Zichron Teruah Ba'ahava. So those are the additions, interestingly, for Shabbat. And then because separately in this book, right, I believe the Yom Kippur service is a completely separate section of this book, so they don't need the additions for that in this section, okay? So, but we're still in, the early paragraphs of the Amidah. But so, I'm just, okay, so, I've lost my place in, I'm sorry. Okay. So we didn't get to, I'm gonna explain something that I probably should have explained before I jumped into all of this, but because this is the Musaf section of the Rosh Hashanah service. So we know that the Musaf, I said this already, is that additional service that commemorates the extra sacrifice, right? The beginning and end of the Musaf Amidah are virtually identical to the beginning and end of the Amidah for evening and morning services, right? We learned this, again, back in our Ein Keloheinu book. It's the middle that those three sections are unique to, particularly on Rosh Hashanah. So there's three sections that I mentioned last week, the Malchuyot, the Zichronot, and the Shofarot. So each section focuses on one of the key themes for Rosh Hashanah. And each section includes 10 biblical verses mentioning that theme. So again, this is why the Musaf Amidah on Rosh Hashanah is long. And similarly, even longer, if you ask me, on Yom Kippur, but we might get to that next week. So the Malchuyot verses, which let's see if I wrote down the page. Except this book is, okay, it should be
130.
Yes, Malchuyot. Okay, so here we go. So we're still in the Musaf Amidah on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and we're now in the Malchuyot section. So the Malchuyot are verses of sovereignty, God as sovereign. And that makes sense because Melech means king, right? And if you think about, we learned, I'm now, in our Lev Shalem, did we get to the Kedusha? We learned about the Kedusha, and the Kedusha being the additional section, which is about God's holiness, okay? We're not here, we elevated to a different concept. So here I'm on the right sidebar again. The first of the special sections of Musaf, Malchuyot, prayers and biblical verses. Okay. All appellations of God are metaphors, but the image of God as sovereign had particular power for medieval and rabbinic Judaism. The Torah has few references to God as sovereign, but there are many in prophetic writings and in Psalms. It represents a rejection of earthly authority as the arbiter of ultimate values. Additionally, the metaphor of God as sovereign expresses the common human experience of a transcendent power, both glorious and terrifying, as well as the corresponding sense of vulnerability and dependence evoked by this image. Lastly, biblical narratives depict the earthly sovereign as functioning as a judge. So by employing the metaphor of sovereignty in reference to God, we focus on Rosh Hashanah as Yom Hadin, the day of judgment, when God is said to ascend the throne of judgment. The Malchuyot section concludes with the fourth bracha on the holiness of Rosh Hashanah, to which is added the phrase Melech HaKol Haaretz, ruler of the whole world. These words join the standard Holy Day Amidah Bracha, which describes God as sanctifying the people Israel on the holy day, in this case specified as Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembrance. So the theme is just repetitive in this section of remembrance, right? And then Aleinu, I didn't realize this. When we studied Aleinu before, I didn't appreciate what this is telling me here, that Aleinu was originally written for the Rosh Hashanah services. It's one of the best known and oft repeated prayers we know. We repeat it multiple times in the service. Its central theme is a proclamation of God's sovereignty, an appropriate introduction to this section. Traditionally, I don't really care who wrote it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, but that's less important. Okay, we have a lot to get through, so I'm going to keep going. Okay, so this whole section of Malchuyot, okay, and there's more about it, and there are sentences that are very interesting. Here, I like this part. So the biblical verses of the Malchuyot, or sovereignty. So this is further in this section, but it says, whereas the book of Psalms, some books of the prophets and the later rabbinic tradition take for granted that God is naturally referred to as king, these three verses are the only verses in the entire 5 books of Moses that expressly connect God to kingship. And it's these 3 verses. Ne'emar, Adonai malach geot lavesh Adonai oz hit azar af. Anyway, so these 3 verses that they're referring to that are written here, where he's very specifically referred to. So melech, malach, melech. So I found that to be very interesting. I didn't really appreciate that. Because throughout the prayer book, that's how we refer to him, right? So, all right, so let's keep going. After, so it goes on a very long time. Even if they say that there are 10 verses, they're very long. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, and in the service, I don't know about the timing, but I'm glad you're going through this, because I was lost. I was like, why is this going on and on? Where am I supposed to end? And I see why now.
Well,
I didn't
and that's,
realize that.
as a child, I was always taught about the Malchuyot, the Zichronot, and the Shofar, but they didn't get into the detail that this book, this Lev Shalem, has allowed me, this Machzor, to understand with such detail. Again, it's just And this is one of the things I love about this book. But on the day, while I'm in services, I don't have time to read all of these notes here on the right-hand side about the history and so forth. So that's why I thought today you guys would appreciate this.
I do.
Well, I'm glad. So let's keep going. So in here is an interlude for blowing the shofar. So as I said last week, we have to get 100 shofar blasts in during the service. So here we've got a whole bunch of them, probably close to 30, I'm guessing. So, or maybe not, but anyway. And then we've moved on. So we finally finished the Malchuyot and we're going to the Zichronot. Okay, so here, Zichronot, they're telling us shifts the prism through which we view Rosh Hashanah to Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembrance, highlighting the covenantal relationship between God and humanity. The metaphor of God as remembering captures the intimate concern and engagement of God with each individual person and creature, as well as our corresponding sense of accountability for our deeds. So, so this, Ata Zocher Ma'aseh Olam, this first beginning sentence, okay? And here they talk about the introductory poem to this section is the earliest liturgical addition to this section. That was not all that helpful, but what I want to see is here. You remember the deeds of the world and you are mindful of your creatures since the beginning of time. Before you stands revealed all that is hidden in every mystery from the moment of creation. So, this is remembering way back to the first moment. Let's see. So here they talk about it. In the Bible, God is described as remembering far more often than are humans. Memory is primarily a divine quality, representing God's ability to overcome the limitations of a particular time, to see the part as one segment of a far greater whole. When humans remember, therefore, we are imitating God, overcoming our own limits, and in godlike fashion, identifying with the breadth of history. Remembering is essential because memory is divine. It is part of what makes us all images of God. Fundamentally, our memory is who we are. Okay, so let's see. He remembers the covenant, right? And so throughout this prayer, like in the first one, the Malchuyot, the word Melech and all different versions of the word Malkeinu came up. Here, we're going to get all different versions of the word Zocher or Zikaron, Zion, Chaf, Resh. So, Vayizkor, V'zacharti, every kind of version of remember. Zecher, Yizkor, Zacharti. So again, over and over and over. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu zachrenu v'zikaron tov lefanecha. So again, remembering all over the place. So here, our God and God of our ancestors, this is what I just read. Remember us favorably. Compassion and deliverance. Okay, so now, Kizocher again, and then an interlude for blowing the shofar. And then we get to the shofarot section. So the shofarot section are the verses of the shofar. The concept there is God as Redeemer, according to what I've been reading. Let's see. Okay, Shalom Yom, the third day. So this part of the shofarot, so this is on the third day. This is here, this section that I'm pointing to on page 135. All three verses that are quoted here, it says, are from from the Torah are taken from the description in Exodus of the revelation on Mount Sinai. The last verse, with its confusion of sight and sound. The people saw the thunder and lightning, so the confusion of sight and sound conveys the full depth of the transformative experience of revelation. So it confused us. But I think that the notion of what we were hearing, and so many talk about that the reason we blow the shofar is to bring us back to this revelation on this day. This is one of the things we are trying to connect with when we hear the shofar. So let's see. So we talked about the shofar last week. Here it talks of the verses from the book of Psalms speak of the shofar as the instrument announcing the day of judgment as God ascends the divine throne. Here's something we talked about earlier. So Allah Elohim, where is this on this page? Allah Elohim, here we go. This is on the top of page 136 in the Machzor. So according to the Midrash, this verse's use of the two names of God, Elohim, associated with strict justice, and Adonai, associated with compassion and loving kindness, reflects how God's relationship with us changes over the course of Rosh Hashanah. At the beginning, God ascends and sits on the throne of justice. As it is said, Elohim ascends with the true the shofar alarm call. But when the people Israel blow the shofar, God's compassion is aroused, and God moves from the throne of justice to the throne of compassion and truly becomes Adonai. As the verse says, with the shofar's sound, Adonai is enthroned. I find that enlightening, given how we've talked about the different names for God and why. And it's not just a question of why, but when. So I wanted to share that with you.
Rachel, can I point out, you might be interested in, as all of us might be, from the bottom of that page, verses from the prophets, if you want to read that.
Yeah, you want to read it? Go ahead.
Okay, it just says the final three verses from the prophets refer to the shofar as God's instrument of redemption. The ram was substituted for Isaac as a sacrifice, and the ram's horn announces that God does not wish the death of Isaac's descendants. The horn of that ram is destined to be sounded in the world that is to come.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've always, our rabbi tends to mention, I think, at the beginning of when we start blowing the shofar, of the things that it connotes. And they do talk about the redemption of Isaac. But perhaps not this concept that God didn't wish for him to die. This is such a confusing, in my opinion, biblical chapter or chapters, the whole concept of the Akedah. And I certainly appreciate that this Machzor brought me so much more understanding and enlightenment and perspectives on how to view it, because there is a tremendous amount written in this Machzor commentary on the Akedah. So the concept of why would God ask him to kill his child? And it's very disturbing, but I think they found a way to give us understanding without just dismissing it and saying this is just craziness, this is just a story. How could this have happened? Okay, so historically they've gone through many different things with the concept of the shofar and trumpets. So here also in this Machzor, they Hatzorot is the word, I think. The Mishnah prescribes that trumpets are to accompany the sounding of the shofar. Trumpets are depicted on the Arch of Titus in Rome as some of the booty brought home after the capture of Jerusalem in 70 CE. They were probably blown only by the priests and Levites, and so have dropped out of our own ritual performance. The Bible records that the trumpets were sounded at the time of the festival sacrifice. So again, while we don't do any of those sacrifices, we try to bring in the elements that are still relevant and doable to our modern practices. Okay, so here, who listens to the splintered call of your people Israel? Shomea kol teruat amo Yisrael barachamim. After all the repetitions of the word shofar, the closing bracha of the service of shofar omits the word. Instead, we praise God as the one who hears the truah, the staccato call of the people Israel. Our collective cries have themselves become a kind of shofar. So the imagery to me is very powerful. So that's, the shofar service takes you from, I think, the act of blowing the shofar to many interpretations of its representations and how you feel while hearing it. Because I don't know if you still feel this, but I feel when I first hear it the first time, I get tingles and chills like when I was a child. But we blow it so many times, we blow it at least 100 times. You become used to it and you're able, I think, to be transported and think of other things that you're feeling, not just that initial wave of, oh my gosh, this emotional response. You can start to then have more intellectual, thoughtful responses. And I think that's part of the purpose of blowing it so many times. Okay, so where does that take us? Okay, so those are the three special sections. And then we go back to what is pretty standard Musaf Amida service. So you get Modi Manach Nulach, which you've done a zillion times. It's just part of your regular Musaf Amida, and you have Sim Shalom. And you do have this additional paragraph. So I'm now at the top of 139 in the Machzor. V'sefer Chaim Baracha V'Shalom U'Farnasa Tova. So that we want to be inscribed for a good, right, for another year in the book. And that's a theme that we keep asking God to do, right? To inscribe us in the book. Please grant us that opportunity to live this upcoming year. Okay.
But the numbers have changed. We're up to 9 prayers in the Machzor, and the regular Musaf stops at 7.
Right. So I believe there should be 10 total. I thought in the Machzor.
Yeah, I don't know what it. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm zooming through because if we were to do this in more detail, we'd need a couple of hours, and I know we don't have that. But so here I am. I'm at the top of 140. Now this is a prayer Hineni that is very specific to the high holidays. This is this prayer is not said at other times, and I wanted to focus for a few minutes on this. So Hineni He'ani Mima'as, right? So this prayer is recited by whoever it's either the Chazan or your Baal Koreh, who's ever leading your service. And it's said on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And it's really the prayer for the leader, where he's confessing, he or she confessing imperfection and praise that is viewed worthy to be the voice of this congregation, despite his or her own shortcomings, that they not be held against him as God hears this prayer on behalf of the entire congregation. So here it tells us in the right-hand side, the responsibility of the leader in the high holiday services is especially weighty, for unlike Shabbat and festival prayers, the prayers of these days, occurring as they do only once a year, are less familiar to the congregation. In the Middle Ages, when most of the congregation did not possess a prayer book, leading the congregation in prayer was an even weightier task. Thus, there developed the tradition of the leader privately praying that the service might be conducted properly, that the people be inspired, and that God be moved by the pleas of the congregation. There are many such prayers called rishuyot. The particular rishut printed here is one of the most often recited in Eastern Europe. It was composed in the 16th century, and the author is unknown. Originally, the prayer was recited silently by the leader, and even today, when it has become a public statement in musical form, some portion of it is recited meditatively or quietly. So, I know in our service, the rabbi always explains, now we are doing, he introduces the Hineni, as I recall, and explains its purpose for being here. And again, he does that because, well, those of us who've been doing this for our whole lives and have good memories kind of remember from year to year, he figures he needs to explain to the congregation because this is the only time of year we do it. Just like we said, this isn't a Shabbat thing. This is a once a season type of thing. And he wants to bring the congregation's attention to that. Okay. And in this book, they have a version, it's a male leader. Here's one version of the prayer, and they made the change, and here it is if it's a female leader. Okay, so a modern day book, we love it. Okay.
What's the difference?
The certain words have a female form versus a male form. Honestly, I have not gone through and compared it, but you can see right here on the left-hand side where in the female version, well, maybe we'll go up and see if they do it in both. Hold on one second.
Rachel, they really need it because in today's world, so many of the cantors that
Are
we see
female.
are female.
Yeah.
Our cantor does a very nice moving Hineni by starting at the back of the congregation.
Oh.
As she sings, she moves forward, and when she gets to your row, everybody in that row stands up.
Oh my goodness. I've not experienced that one.
And so at the very end of the prayer, the whole congregation is standing.
Oh, how beautiful.
That's beautiful.
That's so beautiful. Let me just say, so here in the female version, you have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So, I'm assuming that's one of the additions.
Yeah, and at the bottom too, down at the bottom. Maybe your will.
Maybe you're God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel,
Right.
and Leah. Exactly. So those are the most obvious to me. Marlene, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to share what Lenore says. Our cantor or prayer leader starts at the back, but everybody's already standing. But the movement forward is very powerful, and I like the fact that people stand as the cantor comes forward. So thank you for sharing that, Lenore.
Yeah.
Sure. I have to say that I wish they would do something like that. Maybe we'll have a change this year with the new chazan. I just don't know, right? But I love that. Okay. So, all right. So this is a lot of information for you all. I hope you found it interesting. And I know I'm going pretty darn quickly. But I wanted to get this in, before Rosh Hashanah. And don't feel bad if you're reading the English side of these pages. I'm going to stop sharing here because these are all new and different, right? And you could sit there and struggle through and try and read parts of it, but honestly, you're going to feel like, oh, this is so hard. So do what works for you and don't beat yourself up. These are not paragraphs or even pages that you have seen on Shabbat. These are all additional, okay?
I think it's more meaningful for me to be reading the explanation and it speaks more to my heart than even reading a translation, which isn't as meaningful as the commentary.
To me, that's the beauty of this book. I think they try to provide something for everyone to get through in a more meaningful way. So, Audrey?
Well, first, I think this says that maybe it really would pay to buy the Machzor because you don't have time to read it in services if you're trying to follow the Hebrew. I have so many questions. Let me just do a couple.
I hope I can answer them.
Yeah, no. So the part we were just doing where if you have a female leader, I don't understand grammatically why that would be necessary because I don't understand that grammatically, but so I don't think it matters who the leader is. I think it just matters. It's like the regular Amidah. It just matters
Which version you're choosing to do.
Yeah, so I think that's maybe a bad way to distinguish them. In terms of Hineni, I really never knew how to pronounce it. I have a friend who always says Hineni, and so that's not it. But
well, so that's a different word, Hineni.
oh, okay. So this doesn't mean here I am. What does this mean?
It does mean here I am.
It does, but it's just the spelling is different. This literally is spelled Hineni. So hey, nun with a shava, nun with a tariq, one dot and yud. But so Hineni, which is Moses's response, right? When God asked him, yes, here I am. So that they mean virtually the same thing, but the words are different. And biblical Hebrew is that way.
Okay. So again, I think I asked this for a different word last time or the time before, but why do we pronounce that one with a separate, why do we pronounce the one with a shva instead of just blending it with the heen, like making it a heen instead of a short syllable?
I'm really bad at explaining this, so I'm not skilled enough to explain it, and I likely make mistakes. I know in this case the pronunciation is Hineni, and I think it.
I'm just wondering whether there are rules that depend on what kind of letters they are. And
well, so there's a document I can send you, which I think Geraldine may have shared with me. There are documents written on the shva,
okay.
and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't taught all of the ins and outs of the shva because when I was in Hebrew school, they didn't get into that much grammar. B, when I was taking Ulpan, you weren't reading it, you were talking it. So that wasn't taught then. And then when I was in college, I honestly don't remember them getting into serious explanations of the different possibilities of the moving shva. So it's new to me too.
Okay. I mean, it's, I just need to learn how to read regardless of that. So that's a luxury, but still I'm curious about it. And then a couple of things. Why, okay, for the 100 blowings of the shofar, is that 100 per day, or is that throughout the 2 days of Yom?
No, that's 100 during the morning service of Rosh Hashanah, I believe, is 100.
So, oh wow, okay, that's really is a lot. And finally, I think I'll leave Yom HaZikaron. There's a whole holiday for that. Is that a new holiday?
It's just a different name for the same holiday.
I thought so. So there are two holidays that are right next to each other in May.
Right.
So one of them I
Oh.
thought was Yom HaZikaron. Is it not?
So that's a modern day Israeli
Yeah, so that's a
holiday.
new holiday. Okay.
Right.
Is it-
But so growing up, I was always taught several different names, Hebrew names for the holidays that we celebrated. So, Zaman Matan Torah Tenu, the festival of the giving of the Torah, right? Which is that Shmini Atzeret? Anyway, but so there's, we have different names for these holidays. And like Yom Teruah, they just told us is still Rosh Hashanah. So lots of different names depending on where they're referred to, but they all are referring, and where they're written down, which prophet or which decade or millennia, so some in the Torah, the phraseology from the Torah versus what our common phraseology is.
Okay, but really, was it Lenora? Who recognized the May holidays? Was it you, Lenora? I can't remember who. Anyway, that's what I was just wanting.
I'm gonna look it up. That's what I just, sorry,
I thought that was a modern holiday because I don't remember learning it when I was a kid, so.
Yeah, and I'm not even seeing it, so I'm looking in, oh, I'm looking the wrong month. Hold on one second. Mother's Day, Love, Omer. Yom Yerushalayim. I'm not seeing it.
Oh, thank you, Mary Beth. Mary Ellen, sorry. Mary Ellen.
What did I miss?
In the chat, and that's a good explanation about Hineni versus Hineni.
Ah, yes, okay.
You'd
Very
have to research a little bit more, but that's what I think I found.
Yom HaZikaron is April 25th this year.
Thank you. So Yom HaZikaron, let's see what that says. April 25th.
And Yom
Yes.
HaAtzmaut is also new.
So,
Right.
oh, it's the day before.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
The day before. So these have to do with the counting of the Omer, and they follow. One is Yom HaZikaron is the day before Yom HaAtzmaut, which okay, and those are much more modern day holidays. Well, some, I think, I'm not positive of that.
And Yom HaShoah is also.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that one, yes,
So
because
that's outside the scope of my class technically, so I don't feel as bad not being able to
you
answer.
shouldn't feel bad at all. And the other thing, this next one is just a question probably for a rabbi, but it's interesting to me that we still mourn the temples, both temples, I guess, but especially the second one, because it's the most recent. And I think it's so moving to touch the wall when you have a chance to do that. But at the same time, it strikes me as being strange when it's when we're a religion that is based so much on no physical presence, that God has no physical embodiment. There's not even a son who was reincarnated, or was resurrected.
Well, there's no depiction of God. We're not
There's no
depicting
depiction
him.
of God, and there are no idols, and yet
But-
this building, this place means so much to us.
Well,
So-
but I think it has so much to do with the ritual of what occurred there. And so again, the notion of we had sacrifices, and after the destruction of the temples, we no longer had sacrifices. And so in place of those sacrifices, we have other things like the Kedusha or like the Musaf service, the Musaf service is really, and that to me goes back to what we've talked about, whereas the spirituality of Judaism and the ritual of Judaism. We are so infused with ritual, and how we don't want to give up any of that ritual. And while others of you might be able to speak to this, I only feel this, I don't know all the ins and outs, but certainly what I have read is that when the religion of Christianity broke off from Judaism, part of it was they didn't want all those rituals. It was too complicated. They wanted to make it easier and more approachable for large masses. And so they did away with a lot of our ritual, but you can see that they kept some of it, right? They still have priests who wear what I call yarmulkes on their heads, right?
Yes.
They still wear things that are smaller versions of talitot, right? That they wear a prayer, whatever they call it. Stole.
Yeah.
Yes. So, they have certain elements, but then again, they've done away with others.
And the religious Jews believe that when the Mashiach comes, the third temple will be built, and that will be in Jerusalem. So that is something for future, but that's what they believe.
Well, the other thing is that my ex-rabbi, we have a new one, and they each have their strengths, but the old one, I think, was better able to explain spirituality. But nevertheless, we were taught back then, especially for basic, for people who are thinking.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for a basic, I took basic Judaism, one of just a couple of people in that class who have been born Jewish, but wasn't there because of a significant other. And the rabbi emphasized that the important thing was the ritual, to learn the ritual, even though he did talk about the meaning throughout the class. So I think we're still, at least in the conservative movement and the Orthodox movement, very ritual based.
Absolutely.
And I know that you like the ritual, and I also like. Who did I just lose? Someone left. Anyway.
Carolyn had to go.
Oh, okay. And I also like the ritual. It just struck me as being an interesting juxtaposition between those two thoughts. And I am done now. Even though I have more questions, I am done. So I will do it another time.
Well, I want to wish everyone a Chag Sameach, a Shana Tova. I hope we have a healthier, happier, festive year than we've had the last couple. And we'll be together again next Friday, and we'll talk some more about this if you have questions.
Great.
Thank you, Rachel.